Hi, this is Shalimar Steinberg, and this is the first of two videos that are going to cover our viewports assignment. We've been talking about how we can use viewports more than once on a page and be able to zoom into different aspects of our drawing. So our example of what this is going to look like is right here, and we will be creating 7 differently sized viewports in order to scale different views of the drawing in them. So the first thing that we're going to do is go to the assignment page, and we need to start by downloading our PSA title block if we haven't already. And then we're going to download and save these 2 files, which are going to be inserted into the drawing at different times. So we're going to start with the DB-SAMP drawing, and I'm going to open it and go ahead and save as, and make sure that it's in my drive that I'm saving all of my activities to, which in this case is actually my CAD stuff drive, and I'm going to save it as DB-SAMP. And then I'm going to close that one because we're not going to be drawing in that file. We're going to be inserting that file into our title block file. We're going to do the same thing with the 40 per scale floor title, and open that one, go to save as, and again make sure that it's in the right spot. And there we go. And then we can go ahead and close that one. Now we're in our PSA drawing. You need to delete the pink rectangular viewport because we're going to be putting in our multiple different viewports, and you can't have a viewport inside of a viewport or neither one will react properly. So at this point you can look at the assignment, which the instructions are right here, and the finished example, which is right here. And I will show you that one again. That's this one that shows us exactly what the entire thing should look like. We also have a version of it that we can look at, which I've already downloaded here, that has the dimensions for the different viewports. So that's just to provide you with information on how big to make those approximately. If they're not exactly the same, that's all right, but you do need them to be pretty close, otherwise you're not going to be able to zoom in to the right level when you scale. So we're going to go ahead and open our AutoCAD here. And the next step that we need to take is to do our setup of our drawing. And so if you look here, we need to set our units to architectural. Excuse me. So we're going to go to the big A and go to Drawing Utilities and Units and pick Architectural. And we can just leave it on 16th, and we're going to pick inches. And we'll say OK. And that's just because that's what units the DB-SAMP drawing is set in originally. So now we're going to go into our model space, and this is from a previous one, so I'm going to show you how to do this actually. Sorry. You need to go to the Insert tab, and you're going to go to Insert. So we're inserting this drawing as a block basically. And so I go to Insert, and I have to pick more options because I have to go to where I have that file saved. So in this case, under my CAD stuff, and I'm going to go here and say Open. Now I have some options. I can tell it where to go on screen by clicking, if I do specify on screen, or I can just tell it to go in at certain coordinates. I'm going to have it go in at the 0, 0 origin points of my drawing. I have the option to change the scale, but I want it at its full size and shape, so I'm bringing it in at 1 to 1. And I have the option to rotate it as it comes in if I wish to, but I'm not going to because I want it in the direction that it's already in. I also have the option to have it explode when it comes into the drawing so that it's individual lines again. I don't want to do that because I want to make sure that I'm happy with where it is before I explode it. So I'm going to say OK. It came in right at 0, 0. If it happens to not show up on the screen when you bring it in, then you have brought it in somewhere else in the drawing, and that's okay. You just need to make sure that you do a zoom extents so that you can see where it is in the drawing. And try that before you try adding it again, otherwise you'll just end up with multiple copies just because it's not showing up on the screen. Alright, the next step then is, if you're happy with the placement, to go ahead and explode this. So I'm going to go to the Home tab again, and use the explode command. Now it's all multiple items. This is going to be really helpful later when we need to turn some of the layers off in some of the viewports. The next step then is to go ahead and create 3 additional viewport layers, because we're going to have different viewports on different layers so that we can keep track of them easily. So you will create a PS Viewport 2 layer. If you have this one selected, you can just hit New, and it will let you create that and name it for the second one. I'm not going to because I already did. And then I'm going to set the color of that one to blue. I'm going to do a third one and set it to green, and a fourth one and set it to cyan. The continuous line type and default line thickness will be fine for all 3 layers. Alright, the next step is to actually go in and edit your title block. So you'll go in and you'll change the scale to say as noted, because we'll be labeling each individual viewport as to what scale they're on. Then you'll change your date, your name, and file name. Alright, so now the next step is to go ahead and get onto the Viewport 1 layer. That's for our first viewport that we're going to create. And we're going to go to our Layout tab, and we're going to use the rectangular viewport in order to create our viewport. This can be a little bit challenging in that it can be hard to get it to let you tell it the measurements you want, because it wants to measure from the outside of existing lines in. So it may be faster to draw on a construction layer an existing rectangle and then trace over it with the viewport tool. There are other ways to do this that may be equally fast, but this is the method I'm going to use for right now. And so I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to choose about 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch in from the edges and start my rectangle there, and then I'm going to choose dimensions, and I'm going to tell it that I want it to be, if I look at my example here, let's see, I want it to be 4.3 inches in length and 2.5 inches in width. So back into the drawing here, and that's going to be 4.3 inches and 2.5 inches. And so it drew that rectangle, and then I just need to remember that it'll still rotate, so I need to click on the screen to show it where I want it to go. At that point, I can go ahead and switch back to my PS Viewport 1 layer and go into my Layout tab and then choose Rectangular, and I'm going to start it in this corner and just drag it up to this corner. And now I have a viewport right there, and I can just turn off my construction lines later when I don't need them. I'm also at this point going to double click into my viewport and just turn off the grid, because I don't want the grid from the drawing space to be showing up. And before I create any other viewports, I'm going to go into my model space and turn off the grid there. That way it doesn't show up in any of the other ones. Okay, so my next step is going to be to switch over to my PS Viewport 2 layer. For this one, I'm going to be doing the polygonal viewport. So this is going to have a length of 1.25 for this little arm and for this little arm. And then these two back arms are both going to be 3.8. And then you can do the angled one. You want to do it starting here, going over, up, over, down, and then closing it, unless you want to calculate the angles, because you have to do it in this order in order to get the closed polygon that you need with this tool. So we're going to go ahead and go into Layout again, and instead of rectangular, I'm going to choose the polygonal. I'm going to go up a little bit from this shape, and let's see, I may actually want to do a construction line up and 1.25 inches in to give me that spacing again. So I'm going to switch over to Home. Go ahead and do that really quick. And you do want it on a different layer just so that you can easily remove it later without having problems with the overlap. So I'm going to draw one that goes up 0.5, or actually 0.33, we'll say, and then over 1.25. Okay, now I can go back into the correct layer for my viewport, which is number 2, and then go to my layout tab again. And polygonal, I'm going to start right there, go over to here, go straight up my 3.8, and then over 3.8. And down 1.2, or 1.25, sorry. And I just want to make sure that that's a 90-degree angle. And then I'm going to go ahead and close it. And when I do that, I can hit enter, and it becomes a viewport for me. At this point, I'm going to go back to the home screen, and I'm going to go on to my PS Viewport 3 layer. And with this one, I'm going to do the circle, and then we're going to use the object viewport to convert it for the solarium view. So if I look at my measurements again, I've got a circle that is 2.75 diameter. So I'm going to go in and diameter circle, and I'm just going to place it approximately and then move it if I need to. And I'll say my diameter is 2.75, and that's pretty good. I might need to raise it up a little bit, I'll see, but for now I'm going to be happy with that. And then I have to go over to the layout tab, drop down and pick object. It says which object do you want to turn into a viewport, and I will select that object. And then you see that I have my circular viewport. And then this would also have been a method for creating this rectangular one. We could have just drawn our original rectangle and turned it into one. But for the purposes of this assignment, we're practicing all the different types of viewports, and so that's why we did it that way. The next one that we need to do is to go ahead and go on to our PS Viewport 4. And we're going to draw 4 equal rectangular viewports, which are going to be a height of 3.45 and a width of 5. Or sorry, length of 5 and width of 3.4. And so I'm going to go into the layout tab here, and I can go to this little arrow in the corner that takes me to the manager, which allows me to pick the 4 equal. And I say OK. And I'm going to start even with the bottom edge here. I'm going to go over about 0.33 of an inch again. And then I'm going to go ahead and go up. Let's see, I want to go over 5 inches, I said. So 5 inches. And then up 3.4 inches. And just a second. Oh, I forgot. That doesn't work well with the rectangles. That's why we drew the construction rectangle for the other one. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Go onto my construction line layer. And this time, it wouldn't be easier to just do it all as one rectangle and change it over, because I'd have to then divide it into 4 separate viewports, which is kind of a pain. So 0.33 again. And then this time I can do my dimensions and do my length of 5 and my height of 3.4. And I get my total rectangle. Then I can go back onto the correct layer, go into my layout tab, choose here, pick 4 equal, say OK, and I'm going to start it where that construction line is. And did I not? I didn't hit enter at the end and place it, so give me just a second to get back to where that is. Okay, there we go, and I have gotten that rectangle in there now. I can go back to my other layer, and my layout tab, and my arrow here, and do my 4 equal. Okay, this corner to this corner. And there I've got my 4 equal rectangular viewports. Alright, this is where I'm going to go ahead and end this version of the video, and then I will follow up with you in the next one.